When you think about massive ancient projects, the Egyptian pyramids, the Great Wall of China, they just scream power.
They absolutely do. And today we're looking at one of the most strategic, most powerful borders ever built, Hadrian's Wall up in Roman Britain.
And this thing was built nearly 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, around 122 AD. And this wasn't just a fence, it was the definitive official northern border of the Roman Empire in Britain.
Ordered by Emperor Hadrian himself.
Exactly. He was basically drawing a line in the sand saying, this is where Rome ends.
And the scale of it is just hard to wrap your head around. It's stretched for about 73 miles.
Coast to coast, right across the narrowest part of Britain. It was this massive scar on the landscape, totally unmistakable.
So building something that long, that's not a quick job. It must have been an incredible organizational feat.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about thousands of Roman soldiers, legions of them, who were basically pulled from the battlefield to become engineers and builders for years.
So let's get into that engineering challenge.
Yeah.
For a 73-mile project, you can't just use one type of material, right? How did they manage that?
Well, they were pragmatic. It all depended on the local geology. So in the east, they had access to all this great local sandstone.
Okay, so they just quarried it right there.
Exactly. They cut these massive rectangular stone blocks. That section was built to last and to look imposing.
But what about the West? What if you couldn't find good stone?
You adapt. That's what the Romans were so good at. In the western sections, they initially used turf.
Like actual blocks of sod?
Yeah, layers of tightly packed turf cut right from the ground, laid over a stone foundation. They stacked it high, and it created a really formidable barrier. Maybe not as permanent as stone, but it got the job done.
So when they did use stone, how big are we talking?
We're talking big. The wall was designed to be about 10 feet wide.
10 feet wide? You could almost drive a car on that.
You probably could. And it towered up to 15 feet high in a lot of sections. It was clearly designed not just to keep people out, but to intimidate them.
But a wall is just one layer, right? I mean, you can't just let people walk right up to the base of it.
That's where the next layer of defense came in. Just to the north of the wall, they dug this enormous V-shaped ditch.
How deep was it?
Often about 10 feet deep and maybe 30 feet wide. It was meant to slow down any attack, to make sure anyone approaching was already tired and exposed before they even got to the stone face.
So you have the wall, you have the ditch. But how do you actually police 73 miles of this, 247? That brings up surveillance.
And the Romans were absolute masters of organization. The whole thing was structured with almost mathematical precision. They built a small fort or a gateway at every single Roman mile. They called them milecastles.
It's more than 70 of these milecastles, each one acting like a little guarded checkpoint.
Exactly, a secure gate.
Yep.
But to make sure the entire line was watched, they needed even more observation points.
So they put something in between the milecastles.
They did. Between every 2 milecastles, they built 2 smaller observation towers.
Wow. That's an incredible level of management. It means you were never more than a third of a mile from a watchtower.
Constant vigilance. They had a continuous line of sight. And if one tower saw trouble, they had to tell the whole line, and fast.
Which raises the big question, communication. How do you send an emergency signal across 73 miles without a radio?
They used simple but very effective rapid signaling. During the day, it might be polished metal mirrors flashing signals using the sun.
Or flags, maybe.
Or bright flags, yeah, for basic messages like intrusion or all clear.
And what about at night?
At night, it was fire. Torches or huge bonfires on top of the towers. They had a code worked out. 1 flash means a small raid. 2 flashes could mean a major invasion.
So news could travel faster than a rider on a horse.
Oh, much faster. A serious warning could get to a major headquarters in just a few minutes.
And these headquarters weren't just the little mile castles. They actually built huge military forts right into the wall system.
Yes, the forts. And these were way bigger. Think of them as small, fortified cities designed to hold anywhere from 500 to 1,000 soldiers.
Including cavalry.
Yes, often infantry and cavalry units. These were the real centers of Roman power along the border.
So what would you find inside one of these forts?
Everything you'd need for a long-term deployment. You'd have the headquarters building, the Principia, you'd have massive granaries, the Heraea, plus a fancy house for the commander, and of course, barracks for all the troops.
Now, this is where the strategy gets really interesting. The wall facing north is obvious. But the biggest clue about what the Romans were really worried about is something they built behind the wall,
The vallum.
the vellum.
It's probably the most fascinating part of the whole system, and it's a bit of a puzzle. It was a completely separate feature built maybe 100 or 200 feet south of the wall.
So on the safe side, was it another stone wall?
No, it was this massive earthwork, a huge flat-bottomed ditch about 20 feet wide, flanked by two giant mounds of earth. Building it probably took as much work as the wall itself.
So, why? Why build another huge barrier behind your main defense? Are you worried about the people inside your own territory?
That's exactly what it suggests. The vallum's purpose wasn't to stop northern enemies, it was to restrict access to the wall from the Roman side.
It's purely an internal security measure.
Precisely. It created a strict military zone. It meant that, unauthorized civilians, merchants, maybe even locals who weren't so loyal couldn't just walk up to the wall.
And they couldn't get to the army supplies.
That was a huge part of it. It stopped them from interfering with guards or, more importantly, stealing grain and weapons from the forts. To cross it, you had to use an official causeway, which was heavily guarded.
It's the ultimate form of state control over movement.
It really is.
Okay, so let's talk about those soldiers. What was it like for a guy stationed on this cold, wet frontier?
Well, for most of them, it was a huge shock. The Roman army was incredibly diverse. Many of the troops here were auxiliaries from all over the empire.
So, guys from Spain, Gaul.
Even North Africa. Imagine going from the desert to the cold, damp climate of northern Britain. It would have been a massive adjustment.
And I imagine they were kept busy. It wasn't just standing around looking bored.
Not at all. The daily grind was intense. Constant patrols, endless maintenance on the wall and ditches and drills. Plus, they had to maintain all their own gear-sharpening swords, polishing iron armor, repairing shields.
So why do it? Why put up with that thousands of miles from home?
Two main reasons. First, regular pay, which was a big deal. And second, the ultimate prize. Roman citizenship after 25 years of service, that could change everything for your family.
And when they weren't working, I know the Romans were big on hygiene. So bathhouses.
Oh, absolutely. The communal bathhouse was essential. It was for getting clean, obviously, but it was also the main social hub. It's where you'd relax, gamble, hear the latest news.
Now, while you had thousands of infantrymen, a 73-mile line needs a rapid response force.
And that's where the cavalry came in. They were indispensable. A foot patrol could take hours to respond to a signal from a tower.
But a cavalry unit could be there in minutes.
Exactly. Their speed was crucial for patrols and for scouting missions deep into enemy territory.
And they'd use different gear, right? Fighting on horseback is a different game.
It is. Instead of the short infantry sword, the gladius cavalry often used a longer slashing sword, the spatha. It gave them better reach. They also used smaller, rounder shields that were easier to handle on a horse.
Okay, let's switch to logistics. Feeding thousands of men and horses is a massive undertaking. How on earth did they manage supplies?
This was one of Rome's greatest talents. Every big fort had these specialized granaries, the horrea, and the key feature was their raised stone floors.
Why raise floors?
To let air circulate underneath. It kept the grain from getting damp and rotting. If your grain supply goes bad, your army starves. It's that simple.
And where did all this food come from?
Two main routes. Heavy wagons brought supplies overland on the amazing Roman roads. But the bulk of it came by ship, sailing in from places like Gaul and Spain to ports at either end of the wall.
But you also had a local economy, I'd assume?
You did. Local British farmers saw a huge opportunity. They sold their extra crops and livestock to the army, which was great for the local economy, and supplemented Rome's main supply chain.
This really shows the wall was more than just a military line. It was a place of business.
Which brings us to a key point. The wall was also a busy customs frontier.
Okay, so like a modern border crossing.
Exactly. If you were a merchant, you had to pass through one of the official gates in the milecastles, and there, Roman officials would collect taxes on all your goods.
What kind of goods were coming across?
Things like cattle, animal skins, wool, local crafts, and that system generated a lot of wealth for the empire. By controlling trade, Rome gained economic power over the northern tribes.
So it was a tool of soft power. It was Rome saying, play by our rules, pay our taxes, and you can access our massive market.
Precisely. It was often a lot cheaper and more effective than constant fighting.
And wherever you have that much money and that many soldiers, civilian life is going to pop up.
It sure is. Outside the walls of the big forts, these little civilian settlements grew. They were called vicus.
What were they like?
Lively little frontier towns. You had soldiers, unofficial families living there, plus tons of traders and craftsmen.
I can just imagine the scene. Blacksmiths, bakeries.
All of it. Shops selling imported wine and olive oil, laundries, inns. Blacksmiths were vital, of course, for repairing tools and shoeing all the cavalry horses.
So you had this unique cosmopolitan community on the edge of the empire.
Absolutely. But their entire existence depended on the army's payroll, which meant that when the soldiers eventually left, these settlements just faded away.
And that brings us to the end of the Wall's story. After nearly 300 years, Rome's power in Britain started to fade.
Yeah, the problem started far away from Britain. The empire was under pressure on its European borders from groups like the Goths, and there was a lot of internal conflict back near Rome.
So they needed those soldiers elsewhere.
They did. Troops were slowly pulled out of Britain to go defend other parts of the empire, and as the soldiers left, the money for maintaining the wall dried up.
So the garrisons just couldn't be supplied anymore.
Right. And by the early 5th century, the Roman army had abandoned Britain for good. The wall just stopped being a guarded border.
So what happens to this giant stone structure when nobody's taking care of it?
It becomes a local resource. For the people living nearby, it wasn't a symbol of Roman power anymore. It was just a giant, free quarry.
So they reused the stones.
For centuries, they took all those perfectly cut Roman stones and used them to build their own houses, their farms, even local churches.
But a lot of it is still there today.
Yeah.
It's a World Heritage Site. And for archaeologists, it must be an absolute gold mine.
Oh, it's incredible. We found thousands of artifacts that give us these amazing little snapshots of daily life. Worn out leather shoes, bits of armor.
And I've heard about the letters.
The Vindolanda tablets, yes. They're private letters written on thin pieces of wood. We have soldiers writing home, wives writing to each other. We even have a birthday party invitation. It makes these people so real.
That's the real connection, isn't it? That you could walk along the same path today, see the same hills that a Roman sentry stared at for hours.
It's a massive, lasting reminder of Roman ambition and control. It wasn't just a wall. It was a complex, layered system for defense, for trade, and for projecting power that defined this part of the world for 300 years.
It makes you wonder, are today's massive border walls and systems built to keep people out? Or are they really there to better control the systems and the wealth of those already inside? Good luck with your studies.